My own daughter called me dead weight and sold the house I paid for while I was still sleeping in my own bedroom. She said it was for my safety. She said I needed supervision. But you know what stung the most? The way she said it, as if I were a chore that had outgrown its usefulness. I spent 43 years as a nurse, holding the hands of strangers as they took their last breaths. I've whispered comfort into the ears of people who had no one left. I've cleaned bodies, calmed fears, and carried grief that wasn't mine. And yet, when I became the one who needed gentle hands, my own child, the little girl whose nightmares I chased away, whose college tuition I worked double shifts to pay, looked at me like I was an aging appliance taking up too much space. 3 weeks later, my name was on a file at a senior facility, not as a nurse, not as staff, but as a resident they could wheel to bingo on Thursdays and tuck in at 7 p.m., without asking if I used to stay up reading until midnight. People think the cruelest betrayals are loud, but let me tell you the quiet ones, the ones whispered behind closed doors and signed with your own shaky pen, those are the ones that break something inside you didn't know could break. They thought this was the end of my story. Just an old woman put away neatly, like a box in the attic. They had no idea that at 68, I was about to start the loudest, quietest comeback of my life. You're not alone. This is her quiet comeback. If this kind of story speaks to you, feel free to subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let's begin. My name is Evelyn Brooks, and for 43 years people called me Nurse Eve. I was the one they paged at 3 a.m. when a patient was crying and couldn't say why. I was the one who knew which family needed coffee and which one needed silence. I was the one who held hands when monitors went flat, who smoothed hair and whispered, "You're not alone," even when there was no one else in the room. I spent my working life standing at the edge of other people's endings. I thought that earned me a soft landing at my own. I met my husband, Michael, when we were both too young to understand words like mortgage or cholesterol. He had paint on his jeans and a laugh so big it startled birds off telephone wires. He worked construction. I worked nights at the hospital. We bought a tired little brick house with crooked shutters and a maple tree out front that always looked half determined to give up. "Well, fix it up," he said, resting his hand on the tree trunk. "This house, this yard, this life. Well, make it ours, Eve." We did. Not quickly, not easily, but we did. We patched the roof ourselves. We painted the kitchen cabinets a ridiculous shade of yellow that made everyone squint. We argued over money and made up over cheap red wine at the wobbly kitchen table. We brought home one baby girl and named her Lena because it sounded like light. Michael died at 59. Pancreatic cancer. One of those diagnoses you recognize from across the room and know you can't bargain with. I went from nurse to wife to widow in less than a year. At the hospital, I knew what to say to families like mine. To myself, I had nothing. So I did what I had always done. I went back to work. I put on my badge. I wrapped a stethoscope around my neck. I pressed my grief into the quiet place behind my ribs and told myself I'd take it out later. Later never really came. Instead, I poured what was left of me into Lena. I worked double shifts so she could join every school trip without worrying about money. I learned how to navigate FAFSA forms and college loans, even when the fine print danced in front of my eyes at midnight. I drove her to debate tournaments and waited in parking lots with a thermos of coffee, knitting scarves I never finished. When she got into a good university out of state, she cried and said she couldn't leave me. I hugged her and said, "You are not a plant, baby. You don't have roots, you have feet. Use them." I meant it. I wanted her to have everything I never did. Deep down, though, I also believed something quietly dangerous, that all this sacrifice would buy me safety in her heart when I was old. That one day, when I needed help, my daughter would simply be there. Love doesn't always come back in the shape you send it out. Lena grew up into exactly what Michael predicted. Sharp-minded, ambitious, too restless for small-town life. She moved to Minneapolis, married a man named Joel, who wore nice watches and said leverage in regular conversations, and started working in some field I never quite understood. We talked on the phone at first, a lot. She'd call on her lunch break, walking loud sidewalks, telling me about clients and deadlines and the absurd price of downtown parking. I listened. I loved hearing her voice, even when I didn't understand half the acronyms. But as the years went by, her calls got shorter. "Hey, Mom, Can't talk long. I've got a meeting. We're just boarding. I'll call you when we land. This quarter is insane. Maybe we'll visit next month. At work, I was the one people sought out. At home, I became the one people meant to call. I retired at 65. They threw me a little party in the break room. Store-bought cake, paper plates, a banner that said, "Happy Retirement," in cheerful letters that didn't match the dread in my stomach. The head doctor made a speech about my years of service. Younger nurses hugged me and whispered, "We don't know what we'll do without you." I smiled. I took pictures. I went home with a box of odds and ends. A plant I'd probably kill, a mug with my name on it, a plaque I didn't know where to hang. The following Monday, I woke up at 5:45 a.m., out of habit. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened. No alarm, no shower running in the apartment above mine, no radio in the kitchen blaring the morning news, just the tick of the clock on the wall and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I made coffee. I wiped down an already clean counter. I opened the curtains and watched the maple tree sway in the wind. People imagine retirement as warm, light, and free time. For me, it was the sudden realization that no one needed me at 7 a.m. anymore. I tried to stay active, the way pamphlets for seniors suggested. I joined a book club where no one really read the book. I volunteered to make soup for church events. I walked the aisles of the grocery store, slowly, just to be among people. Most evenings, I sat in my living room with the TV on low and my phone face up beside me, waiting for it to light up. Sometimes it did. Lena would send a picture from an airport lounge, a rooftop bar, a conference in a city I'd only ever seen on postcards. "Look, Mom," she'd write, "we're doing so well. You'd be proud." I was proud. I always sent back hearts and clapping emojis, because that seemed to be the language everyone understood now. But in the quiet after the screen went dark, another feeling grew beside the pride, a small, dense knot of being left behind. The first time I felt truly old was not when the mirror caught the softening jawline I didn't recognize, or when my hands ached after carrying groceries. It was at a dinner Lena and Joel hosted when they finally did come to visit. They invited friends, neighbors, people with expensive glasses, and easy laughter. I made my famous roast chicken and potatoes. People complimented it politely, briefly, and then turned back to talking about things I didn't have language for. Crypto, equity stakes, Series B. They spoke in a dialect of money and speed and endless future. I tried to add something, some small story from the hospital, a lesson I'd learned from an old patient. Lena touched my arm lightly and said, smiling too brightly, "Mom, that's a bit heavy for dinner, don't you think?" The conversation moved on without me. I sat there, my fork in midair, feeling like someone had slowly turned down the dimmer switch on my existence. It wasn't cruelty. Not exactly. It was something more subtle. I had moved from center to background in my own child's life. That's how it starts. When a woman disappears, not with shouting, with interruptions, with eye rolls, with "you wouldn't understand," with "you already told that story, Mom." I went home after that visit and stood in the doorway of my little brick house, paint peeling, gutters needing work, maple tree stubbornly alive. I ran my hand along the banister Michael had refinished one summer. I looked at the wall where Lena's height was marked in pencil lines from age 4 to 16, and I thought, with a kind of fierce tenderness, this house remembers me, even if no one else does. I didn't know it then, standing in my faded living room in my comfortable old slippers. But the world was already rearranging itself around me, papers being drawn up, decisions being discussed in low voices in another city. It would take one dizzy spell in my kitchen, one phone call to my daughter, and one stack of papers on my dining room table to tip everything over. But that belongs to the next part of the story. They always say betrayal comes with warning signs, raised voices, broken trust, big fights. But for women my age, betrayal often comes dressed as concern. It starts with a soft hand on your shoulder, a gentle sigh, a patronizing smile, a sentence beginning with, "Mom, I just want what's best for you." Sometimes the knife isn't cold steel. Sometimes it's warm hands. 3 weeks after that awkward dinner at my daughter's house, I had the dizzy spell. It happened in my kitchen, my familiar little kingdom, where every drawer still remembered my touch. I had been slicing apples for a pie when the world swayed sideways, not violently, just enough for the counter to feel too far away. I sat down slowly, breathing through my nose the way I used to teach patients. It passed in under a minute. But fear doesn't measure time. It measures vulnerability. I called Lena, not because I needed help, but because I imagined she'd want to know. She picked up on the third ring. "Mom? Everything okay?" "Just a little dizzy spell," I said. I sat down. "I'm fine now." Silence. A dangerous, calculating silence. "Mom," she said finally, "I think we should talk about your living situation." That was the moment the floor tipped again, not physically, but in the way the earth shifts under a house before it cracks. 2 days later, Lena and Joel drove 3 hours to see me. They walked around my home the way buyers inspect a property, opening drawers, tapping walls, looking for faults that justified decisions already made. "You really shouldn't be living alone," Joel said, arms crossed like he was delivering a quarterly report. "This house has stairs. Poor lighting. No railings." "I've lived here 40 years, I replied quietly. "That's exactly the problem," he said. Lena touched my elbow. "Mom, it's about your safety." My safety. That word again. Safety. As if it was something I'd forgotten how to hold. Safety. As if the world had suddenly become a place I needed shielding from. They sat me at the dining table, the same table where Michael and I once signed our mortgage papers, and spread out a small stack of documents. "This is a temporary plan," Lena explained, "just until we find the right place for you." The right place. A phrase that tasted like metal. I scanned the papers. Lots of cheerful language about supervision, support, care. The kind of pamphlet wording designed to soothe guilt. "Mom," Lena continued softly, "you can't stay here. It's too much for you. Too much for me. My home. My memories. My life." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Joel cut in. "Also, we've had an offer on the house." The room went still. "What offer?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "Technically, the property is in Lena's name now, remember? You signed it over years ago. Estate planning. I remembered signing forms. I remembered trust. I remembered love, but I didn't remember signing away my home." I looked at Lena, my daughter, my only child. She avoided my eyes. "It's for your future, Mom," she whispered. Future. A word that, in their mouths, meant removal. They drove me to the senior facility the next morning. "Just for a tour," they insisted. The building was clean enough. Wide hallways, bright paint, smiling staff. But everything smelled faintly of vanilla air, freshener, and resignation. I watched a woman in a wheelchair roll herself slowly toward the dining hall. She looked maybe 85, her hair neatly brushed, her cardigan buttoned crookedly. A staff member called out, "Time for bingo, sweetheart, sweetheart!" A word that sounds gentle, but feels like erasing. I had spent decades as the one pushing wheelchairs, not sitting in them. I had been the one offering blankets, not receiving them. My throat tightened. "Mom, just try to be open-minded," Lena murmured. Joel added, "Places like this are state-of-the-art. Lots of activities. You'll make friends." I wanted to scream. I already have a life. I already have friends. I am not an extra mouth. I am your mother. But women my age know this truth. When younger people have decided you're incapable, your words become optional. I walked slowly through the hallway. Rooms with identical furniture, identical curtains, identical end tables, identical stories too. I suspected stories of women who once lived large, complex lives before someone else shrank them down to residence. The admissions coordinator handed me a pamphlet. "Let us take care of you," it read on the cover. "Let us?" As if care was something done to you, not with you. Lena placed her hand over mine. "Mom, we just want you safe." And that was when I understood something bone deep. This wasn't about safety. It was about convenience. I was becoming the wrinkle in their smooth, curated life. The burden, the obligation, the mouth to feed, the thing that didn't fit the aesthetic. That evening, they left me there just for a trial stay. A polite wording for a decision already sealed. My room was at the end of the hall. A single bed, a dresser, a window overlooking a parking lot. Someone had placed a fake plant on the side table, a plastic attempt at warmth. I sat on the bed. my hands trembling. I had helped people die with dignity. I had held thousands of hands through fear, despair, and grief. But nothing prepared me for the sound of that door closing behind me. A sound that whispered, "You don't belong out there anymore. Your story is finished. Your independence has expired." They thought this place would silence me. They thought it'd fold quietly into bingo nights, lukewarm tea, and polite surrender. They thought they had written the final chapter of my life. They were wrong. This was not the end of my story. It was the spark that would burn down the life they built without me. The first night in that senior facility, I learned something I never understood as a nurse. Silence can be louder than suffering. I lay in the narrow bed, the kind that creaks when you breathe, and listened. Not to medical alarms, not to staff moving briskly down hallways, not to the familiar sounds of hospital life, but to women crying quietly into their pillows, to the faint shuffle of slippers belonging to people wandering because their memories had come unstitched, to the unnerving calm of a place where everyone was waiting for something, or for nothing at all. The air was too clean. Sterile, almost. Like grief had been wiped off the walls. I stared at the ceiling and tried to swallow the truth. My daughter had placed me here, not with love, but with paperwork. On my second morning, a staff member poked her head into my room without knocking. "Rise and shine, Evelyn. Time for your morning assessment." Assessment. The word hit me wrong. In the hospital, assessments were for patients, not for capable adults. "I don't need one," I said, sitting up. "I'm not under medical care." "Oh, we do this for everyone," she said brightly, as if cheerfulness could disguise control. She took my blood pressure, my pulse, asked memory questions Eid taught nursing students to ask. Then she wrote something in my file. That file, the one Lena and Joel had probably handed over with hushed urgency, became the judge of what I could and couldn't do. "Breakfast is at 8, she added. "Don't be late. Routine keeps everyone stable." Stable. Like I was a table with one wobbly leg. The dining hall was filled with people who had once lived full, sprawling lives. Teachers, veterans, librarians, mothers, grandmothers. Now sitting at identical tables eating identical bowls of oatmeal. One woman with bright blue eyes looked up at me. "You knew?" she asked. I nodded. "They always look so hopeful on the first week," she whispered. "Hopeful? That someone's coming back for them." Her words hit me like a cracked rib. Sharp, sudden, hard to breathe through. "My daughter said this was temporary," I murmured. She smiled, a sad little smile. "They always say temporary." A staff member walked by and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Now, Jean, let's not scare our new resident." Resident. The word felt like a collar around my neck. I wasn't a resident. I had a house, a life, a history. But in that place, none of it mattered. They saw only what was convenient to see. Later that afternoon, I found the courtyard, a small square of patchy grass, surrounded by beige walls. A woman sat on a bench feeding crackers to a bird perched fearlessly beside her. She looked around my age, maybe a few years older, with silver hair braided neatly down her back. "You must be Evelyn," she said, without looking up. I blinked. "How did you know?" "Word travels. And your daughter?" "She cried in the lobby the day she left you here. That kind of performance gets attention." I sat beside her slowly. "My name is Marjorie," she said. "I was a school principal for 33 years. Raised 2 boys, taught hundreds, ran a community garden. Now I get scolded for walking without a buddy." She tossed another cracker to the bird. "They think caution is kindness," she said. "Sometimes it is. Other times, it's a cage." I felt tears threaten, not because she was cruel, but because she was right. "I don't belong here," I whispered. Marjorie nodded. "Most of us didn't, but someone else decided we did." She turned to me then, really looked at me. "You're still fighting. I can see it. Don't lose that. This place tries to train it out of you." The days blurred together. Morning assessments, group activities that felt more like sedation than recreation, evenings where the hallways dimmed to a soft amber, as if the building itself was trying to lull us into compliance. I signed up for a creative expression class, thinking it might help. It was coloring, with crayons, big chunky ones meant for arthritic hands. I walked out before the instructor finished explaining the therapeutic benefits. My indignation surprised even me. At 68, I had taught young nurses to manage end-of-life care. I had comforted families through impossible decisions. I had seen medical charts so complicated they looked like maps to lost worlds. And here I was being offered a coloring page of a smiling duck with a son wearing sunglasses. The humiliation leaked into my chest like cold water. That night, I tried calling Lena, straight to voicemail. I tried texting. No response. 3 hours passed. 6, 12. The truth bloomed slowly, like a bruise. She wasn't checking in. She wasn't second-guessing her decision. She wasn't worried. She was adjusting to a life where I no longer lived in it. I looked around my room, my private suite, as the brochure bragged. A twin bed, a laminated dresser, a chair with floral upholstery so faded it looked ghostly. A room designed not for living, but for waiting. Waiting to be visited, waiting to be managed, waiting to disappear quietly. But I was not quiet, not anymore. Something old and wild and fiercely alive stirred inside me, something I had buried since Michael died, since retirement hollowed out my days. The part of me that had advocated for patience, the part of me that had fought insurance denials to get someone hospice care, the part of me that had once saved a whole unit from collapsing during a blackout, that part whispered, "If they can decide your future on your behalf, then you can take it back." And that was the beginning of everything that came next. There is a moment every woman remembers, a moment that splits her life cleanly into before and after. For me, it happened on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic Wednesday. Not one with storms or sirens or shouting. A quiet Wednesday. The kind that tastes like lukewarm tea and resignation. It began with a clipboard. A young staff member named Holly knocked on my open door. "Hi, Evelyn. I'm here for your mobility assessment." Mobility. Another word that sliced a little dignity away. "I don't need an assessment," I said. "I walk fine." Her smile was soft, sugary. The kind I used to give confused patients as a nurse. I hated that I recognized it. "This is just to make sure you're safe," she chirped. Safe. There it was again, weaponized concern. "I know exactly how these assessments work," I said, crossing my arms. "I trained nurses for 20 years. Her smile froze. "Well, policy is policy." She guided me down the hallway, watching intently as I stepped, like my legs were a science experiment. "Hold on to the rail, please. I don't need it. For safety." The word grated against my skin. I lifted my chin and walked without touching the rail. My steps were steady, my pace strong, but when I returned to my room an hour later, a slip of paper sat on my nightstand. Recommendation: increased supervision, risk of instability. Consider transfer to higher support wing. My hands trembled not with fear, but with anger so old it tasted metallic. They were planning to move me, to take even more autonomy, punish one dizzy spell with a lifetime of monitoring. No, no, I would not vanish into these beige hallways. I folded the slip in half, then in half again, then again, until it was a tiny square of quiet rebellion. I tucked it under my pillow. The bed sagged slightly. Bed number 7. Room number 35. Patient number I refused to memorize. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. Something cracked open inside me, a feeling I hadn't allowed myself to touch in years. I deserve better than this. That afternoon, I slipped out to the courtyard, seeking the only person who saw through the place's soft tyranny. Marjorie. She was knitting when I approached gray yarn, neat stitches, hands steady despite her age. "They're trying to move me to a higher support wing," I said. She didn't look surprised. "They do that when you show too much independence. The more you resist, the more they call it confusion." My chest tightened. "I'm not confused." "Oh, I know." She tapped her temple. "You're dangerous. Women like you always are. Dangerous? To their systems, their rules, their need to control." I sank onto the bench. "I need to leave," I whispered. Marjorie set down her knitting. "Then leave," she said simply, as if it's that easy. She turned toward me, eyes sharp despite the wrinkles softening everything else. "Listen to me, Evelyn Brooks. You spent your life helping people die with dignity. Now you have to help yourself live with dignity. Her words slipped into a hollow part of my chest and settled there warm, bright, stubborn. Live with dignity. The idea felt reckless, impossible, alive. But how? I asked. She leaned in. Every place has cracks, she said. You just have to find the one big enough to breathe through. That night, lying in the dark, I studied the room, its corners, its shadows, its patterns. I had spent 43 years navigating medical systems, advocating through bureaucracy, outsmarting protocols designed by people who never touched a patient. If I could get a hospice patient discharged safely through 6 layers of administrative firewalls, surely I could get myself out of here. I sat up slowly, pulling my knees to my chest. The hallway lights dimmed at 9. Staff rotations changed at 10. The night nurse was new, nervous, overwhelmed, easily distracted. Patterns. I began watching, listening, learning the rhythm of the place. When staff chatted, when the phone rang, when the coffee machine beeped, when the elevator doors hissed open. A patient's room is never silent, not in a facility like this. There is always movement, always noise. But around 2:27 a.m., every night, right after the final rounds, there was a pause, a breath, a moment when the building seemed to sleep. I started counting the seconds. 2 nights in a row, the pattern held. By the 3rd night, I knew. This place wasn't perfect. It wasn't airtight. There was a crack, a small one. But enough. On the 4th night, the night everything shifted. I woke before the rounds, heart pounding, a quiet, steady drumbeat. I dressed silently, loose pants, soft shoes, clothes that wouldn't betray me with noise. When the hall lights dimmed, I waited, counted, listened. Footsteps, then silence. A cart rolling, then quiet again. Then that moment, that breath. 2:27 a.m. I opened my door. The hallway was a long tunnel of muted light. A single flickering bulb near the elevator blinked like a nervous signal. My pulse thudded in my ears. I stepped out. Left foot, right foot, a glide, not a stomp. I moved slowly at first, then steadily. Then with a kind of trembling certainty. I'm leaving. I'm really leaving. The elevator would be too loud, too obvious. So I aimed for the back exit. I'd seen the maintenance worker use it for smoke breaks, a door with a rusted hinge and a broken sensor. My breath caught as I approached. Please open. Please open. I pushed. It groaned, a low, aching sound, but it opened. Cold night air rushed in, sharp, honest, real. The first real air I had breathed in weeks. I stepped outside. For the first time since my daughter signed those papers, since the world decided I was finished. I felt something swell in my chest. Not fear, not anger, but something much older, a kind of rebirth, a fierce, burning return of self. I closed the door quietly behind me, and then I walked. Into the night, into the unknown, into the next chapter of a life no one expected me to reclaim. Into my comeback. The cold night swallowed me the moment I stepped outside. Not the soft cold of autumn mornings, not the crisp cold of early winter. This was the sharp, metallic cold that makes your breath show your fear. The parking lot lights flickered overhead, buzzing like anxious insects. The facility stood behind me, big, beige, and silent, like a mouth that had expected to swallow me forever. I pulled my thin cardigan tight, wishing I'd grabbed a coat. But coats weren't allowed in rooms without permission. Too bulky, they said. Too risky. Funny how even warmth becomes contraband in a place built for care. I didn't know where to go. I had no wallet, no phone, no car keys, not even the dignity of a plan. But even without direction, I knew one thing. Anywhere was better than going back inside. I started walking. Slow at first, testing my legs on the uneven pavement. Then faster, arms wrapped around myself, shoes slapping softly against the ground. I passed the hedges, past the employee parking lot, past the sign that read, in cheerful blue letters, Meadowbrook Retirement Community, a safe place to live, laugh, and thrive. Thrive. A word that had felt like an insult from the first day. I kept moving. Half a mile down the road, my breath fogging in front of me, I saw a convenience store. Its neon sign buzzed through the darkness like a lighthouse for the desperate. I pushed the door open. Warm air, bright lights, the smell of cheap coffee. A young clerk, maybe 19, wearing a hoodie and boredom, looked up from his phone. Evening, he said, blinking at me. I realized, suddenly, painfully, that I must have looked wild. Gray hair, messy, eyes wide, clothes wrinkled. No bag, no coat, no explanation. A woman running from somewhere she wasn't supposed to escape. I need to use your phone, I said, trying to steady my voice. He hesitated. Please, I added, softer. It's important. Something in my voice must have reached him, because he slid the store phone across the counter. I picked it up. My fingers shook. Who was I supposed to call? Not Lena. I would not beg my way back into the cage she built for me. I would not let her explain or justify or gaslight me into compliance. I needed someone who remembered me before I became invisible, and then, like a hand touching a light switch, I knew exactly who. I dialed the number by heart. It rang once, twice. Then, hello? A warm, steady voice answered. This is Ruth. Ruth, my best friend of 40 years. The woman who brought casseroles when Michael died. The woman who sent me birthday cards even after I forgot to send hers. The woman I hadn't seen in almost 2 years because Lena said I needed space from the past. My throat tightened. Ruth, I whispered. It's me. A pause. Then, Evelyn? She breathed. Oh my God. Honey, where are you? The dam broke. Tears I had swallowed for weeks rose like a tide. I need help, I choked. I don't have anywhere to go. You come straight to my house, she said firmly. I don't care what time it is. I don't care what anyone told you. I'll stay on the phone with you until you get here. She lived 3 miles away. Not close, not far. Just enough distance to feel impossible for someone my age. Exhausted, cold, and half broken. I can walk, I said. I'll try. The hell you will, Ruth snapped, suddenly sounding like the woman who used to threaten hospital administrators for messing up patient charts. I'm driving to pick you up. Stay put. Do not move. Before I could protest, the line clicked, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Someone coming for me. Someone who didn't need an explanation. Someone who didn't see me as liability or burden. Someone who remembered I once had worth. 15 minutes later, headlights swept across the shop windows. A car door slammed. The clerk glanced out. You waiting for someone? I nodded, wiping my cheeks. The bell above the door jingled as Ruth burst inside, hair frizzy, coat thrown over pajamas, wearing mismatched slippers because she clearly hadn't wasted a second. Evelyn Brooks, she shouted, her voice echoing through the aisles. The clerk jumped. I stood frozen. And then she was hugging me, a fierce, grounding hug that smelled like lavender detergent and comfort and home. Oh, sweetheart, she murmured into my hair. What did they do to you? I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. She held my face in both hands, looked me over like a mother checking a wounded child. You're safe now, she said. You hear me? You're safe. I nodded, tears spilling again. She guided me gently toward the door. As we stepped outside, I looked back at the convenience store, at its neon lights, at the young clerk watching us with curious eyes. That store was the border between who I had been and who I was about to become. Because running away wasn't the end. Running away was the beginning. Ruth drove us through the sleeping streets, her voice steady as she navigated the dark. They had no right to put you there, no right to make decisions without you, no right to take your home. Her anger was warm, righteous, the kind of anger that holds you up instead of tearing you down. I stared out the window at the passing houses, each one a glowing square of someone else's story. Ruth, I whispered. What if I can't fix any of this? She squeezed my hand. Honey, she said, you survived widowhood. You survived 43 years of night shifts. You survived losing your identity once. She turned to me, eyes blazing. You are not done. Not even close. We're going to fight this. Together. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I believed her. Because that was the night the world remembered my name. Not resident #35. Not mom used as a tool for management, not sweetheart spoken like a dismissal, but Evelyn Brooks, a woman, a survivor, a force waking up again, a woman walking into the comeback of her life. Ruth's house sat on a quiet street overlooking Lake Superior, the kind of place where the sunrise paints the water in soft shades of gold and lavender. A peaceful place, a healing place. A place where someone like me might remember how it feels to breathe without permission. When I woke up on her couch that first morning, wrapped in a crocheted blanket that smelled of cinnamon and fabric softener, something strange happened. I didn't feel old. I didn't feel disposable. I didn't feel like a problem to be solved. I felt human again. That was the power of being somewhere you're wanted. Ruth bustled into the living room carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You didn't sleep," she said, handing me one. "I can see it on your face." I smiled weakly. "I slept some. Some isn't enough. After what they did to you? You need rest, Evelyn." But first, she sat down across from me and leaned forward. "We make a plan." The way she said it, calm, certain, without hesitation, made something warm bloom in my chest. "A plan?" I repeated. "Yes." Ruth sipped her coffee. "The kind where you take your life back before anyone even realizes it slipped out of their hands." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had been surviving for so long, I'd forgotten how to imagine a future. But Ruth wasn't waiting for my approval. She pulled out a notebook and uncapped a pen with the authority of someone preparing for a campaign. "Okay," she said. "First question. Do you want to stay here until we get everything sorted?" The answer rose from me instantly. "Yes," I whispered. If it's not too much trouble." Ruth scoffed. "Honey, I'd fight off a bear for you. Having you here is the opposite of trouble." I laughed a real laugh, shaky but alive. It felt like pushing open a window that had been stuck for years. She flipped to a blank page. "Next. Housing. Your daughter sold the house, but that doesn't mean the sale was legitimate." "It was in her name," I said quietly. Ruth shook her head. "So? A signature under pressure is not consent, and you don't even remember signing half those documents." I swallowed hard. Those papers, those conversations, those subtle manipulations. A knot tightened in my stomach. "Do you think she meant to harm me?" I asked softly. Ruth didn't answer right away. She reached out and placed her hand over mine. "I think she forgot you're a person," she said. "That's the problem with the world, Evelyn. People forget older women are still people." Her words hit something inside me, something raw and wordless. I blinked back tears. "So what do we do?" "We talk to a lawyer," she said. "A real one, not one your son-in-law handpicked, and we gather proof." "Proof?" The word felt solid, like a railing I could hold on to. After breakfast, toast and jam, simple but the best meal I'd had in weeks, we climbed into Ruth's car. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere you need to be," she said, pulling onto the road. We drove 20 minutes until the landscape shifted from quiet houses to a wide stretch of shoreline lined with old, weather-beaten shops. She parked in front of a cozy cafe with a blue door. "This," she announced, "is where we're going to clear your head." Inside, the cafe smelled like espresso and warm pastries. Couples talked softly. A few older women sat at the corner table knitting and laughing in a way that wasn't allowed in the retirement facility. Ruth ordered for us 2 lavender lattes, 1 almond croissant, 1 blueberry scone. "You need sugar for what's coming," she said, sliding the plate toward me. We sat near the window, lake breeze drifting through a cracked open pane. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost passing through someone else's world. I felt present, solid, a woman with a place to sit in the sun. Ruth opened the notebook again. "Okay, legal plan. But before we get lost in paperwork, there's something bigger you need to decide." I looked up. Her expression softened. "Do you want your old life back?" she asked gently. "Or do you want a new one?" The question settled over me like a fog. My old life? The house Michael and I built? The maple tree? The yellow cabinets? The decades of love and memories? Or the version Lena had rewritten without me? The one where I was an inconvenience? A burden? A responsibility to manage? No, not that life. But a new one? My pulse quickened. What would a new life even look like? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Ruth smiled knowingly. "That's the best part," she said. "You get to decide." She let me sit with the question, Let me breathe it in, roll it around, taste its freedom. A new life. A life where I wasn't mom who can't be trusted. Not the dizzy one. Not the extra mouth. A life where I could be someone again. Someone with purpose. Someone with voice. Someone who mattered. After a long moment, I whispered, I think I want a new one. Ruth's smile grew warm and wide. Good, she said. Because I have an idea. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, I knew that look, I said. You're planning something. Her eyes glittered with mischief. Evelyn Brooks, she said. How do you feel about creating a place where women like us, women who've been overlooked, underestimated, talked over, or tossed aside, can come together and remember who they are? My breath hitched. A place for women like us. Hope unfurled inside me like a flag. I don't just like that idea, I said slowly. I love it. Ruth nodded. Then that's where we start, she whispered. And just like that, in a small cafe with lavender lattes and a notebook full of scribbles, the comeback I never thought I'd have began to take shape. In the days after I escaped the facility, I learned something surprising. Freedom is terrifying when you've been caged long enough. Even breathing felt like a choice I had to relearn. But Ruth treated my return to the world as if it were a mission. Not a rescue, not a favor, a mission. Every morning she woke up early, made strong coffee, and said the same thing. All right, Evelyn. Today we reclaim something. The first morning, it was my dignity. The second, my voice. On the third, she said it was time to reclaim my future. I stared at her across her small kitchen table, sunlight turning her silver hair into a halo. My future? I repeated. Yes, she said, and to do that, we start with proof. She tapped her notebook, the one filled with ideas, names, dates, fragments of the life it'd been pushed out of. We gather documents, she said. Bank statements, hospital forms, property records, anything that shows you weren't of sound mind when they pressured you. I was of sound mind, I said. I know that, she replied. But we need evidence to show the world. Her words lit a slow-burning fury inside me. I had spent my whole life advocating for others, signing papers to authorize treatments, guiding families through impossible decisions, protecting patients who couldn't speak for themselves. And in the end, no one protected me. Not even the daughter I raised. Ruth must have seen the change in my face, because she nodded sharply. Good, she said. Use that anger. Women our age have earned the right to be angry. Our first stop was the local records office. A young clerk with a too-perfect beard clicked through files while Ruth explained, voice steady, polite, but sharp as polished steel. We need all property records concerning this address, she said, sliding a paper with my old home's address across the counter. He squinted at the screen. Huh, he said. Looks like it was transferred about 7 months ago. My stomach twisted. Transferred? I whispered. Not sold? Correct, he said. It was a voluntary deed transfer. Voluntary. A word that slapped me across the face. I remembered the papers. Lena's gentle tone. Her saying, Mom, it's just estate planning. Everyone our age does it. I signed because she was my daughter. Because she was my blood. Because I trusted her. The clerk kept scrolling. Then, he continued, 2 weeks ago it was sold to a development company. Ruth leaned in. Which one? He mumbled the name. I felt the room dim. It was Joel's company. Of course it was. Ruth let out a breath through her nose, the kind of exhale that meant she was restraining language the clerk didn't need to hear. Print everything, she said. He did. Page after page came out of the small office printer. Paper filled with the proof of my disappearance. Proof that my home had been taken. Proof that signatures had been used like weapons. Proof that love had been turned into leverage. I stared at the documents until the words blurred. How could she do this? I whispered. Ruth placed a hand on my shoulder. Because she forgot who you are, she said softly. But we're going to remind her. Next, we drove to the facility. Not inside, just to the sidewalk across the street. The place looked different from the outside, not like a home, not like a refuge, but like a quiet machine built to process old age into compliance. Women walked slowly through the courtyard, bundled in blankets against the morning wind. One sat by herself on a bench. Another held a staff member's arm as if she'd fall without it. My eyes burned. "That could have been me," I whispered. "No," Ruth said. "That was you. But you fought your way out. And inside, there are women who don't know they can." The sadness hit me with surprising force, the realization that my story wasn't unique. That disappearing older women wasn't an accident of my family. It was a pattern. "The world doesn't fear old men," Ruth murmured. "It fears old women. We remember too much. We ask too many questions. We don't stay quiet." I felt the truth of her words settle deep inside me. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We get witnesses," she said. "If the facility mishandled your case, someone will know." We didn't go inside. Not yet. But I stood on that sidewalk and promised myself something. I would return, not as a resident, but as a reckoning. Later that afternoon, after gathering records, after making copies, after starting a file thicker than my fears, Ruth drove us to the edge of town. "Where are we going now?" I asked. She smiled. "To meet someone." We pulled into the driveway of a tidy blue house. Wind chimes tinkled on the porch. An older woman, tall, thin, wearing a cardigan with daisies on it, opened the door. "Evelyn," she said warmly, "I'm so glad Ruth brought you." I blinked. "Do I know you?" She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. But I know what happened to you." Her name was Alice Hanford, a retired social worker, a woman who'd seen too many seniors placed against their will, a woman who'd testified in court more times than she could count, a woman who had spent her life trying to protect people like me. She brewed tea while Ruth and I sat at her kitchen table. Then she said something that made my breath stop. "Your case isn't isolated. What your daughter did is more common than you think." She slid a binder onto the table, a thick one. Inside were stories, names, dates, statements, reports. Women pushed out of their homes, signatures obtained through guilt, medical files exaggerated or manipulated, facilities used as convenient warehouses for inconvenient mothers. My hands shook as I flipped through it. "How many?" I whispered. "Hundreds," Alice said softly. "And those are just the ones who fought back." Ruth squeezed my hand. "And now you," she said. "You're going to be one of the fighters." I took a deep breath. In that moment, something clicked inside me, a shift, a lock snapping open, a truth rising to the surface. I wasn't just reclaiming my life. I was about to reclaim something much bigger. My story wasn't just mine. It was the story of every woman who'd ever been dismissed, every mother labeled burden, every widow pushed aside, every older woman treated like a problem instead of a person. Alice looked at me with warm, fierce eyes. "You ready to begin?" she asked. "Yes," I said, voice steady. For the first time in months, I meant it. 2 days after meeting Alice Hanford, my world shifted again, not violently, not loudly, but with the slow, certain gravity of a door unlocking from the inside. For the first time in months, I felt the shape of my old self returning. Not the exhausted widow. Not the retired nurse people forgot to miss. Not the resident in a beige facility where life went to shrink. But the woman who once held families together in their darkest nights. The woman who carried dying patients not with strength, but with tenderness. The woman who still mattered. Alice's kitchen became our war room. Stacks of papers lined her table, medical records, property transfers, facility brochures, bank statements Ruth had helped request. Alice pointed at one document. "This," she said, "is a cognitive impairment report filed by the facility's physician." My stomach dropped. "I never took a cognitive test," I said. "I know," she replied, "which means this was either done without your consent or without you." Ruth muttered a quiet curse under her breath. Alice continued, "If we can prove this assessment was falsified, we can challenge everything built on top of it, your transfer, your supervision order, even the sale of your home." My hands trembled, not from fear, from possibility. "Can we really fight this?" I asked. Alice gave me a look I'd seen 1,000 times from strong women who'd lived long lives. A look that said, "Honey, don't underestimate an older woman with nothing left to lose. We won't just fight it," she said. "We'll peel it open layer by layer until the court sees what was done to you." For the next week, Ruth drove me everywhere. We visited banks where tellers recognized me from years of depositing Michael's paychecks. We visited the courthouse for certified copies. We visited neighbors who remembered the day Lena's car sat in my driveway for exactly 8 minutes while she checked in on me. Every piece added to the picture. Every signature carried a shadow of coercion. Every timestamp hinted at a plan formed long before my dizzy spell. And every step took me further from the woman they had tried to compress into silence. But something else started forming too. Not a plan for revenge, a plan for meaning. One evening, Ruth and I sat on her porch watching the lake turn purple under the setting sun. The binder of evidence sat between us like a heartbeat. "You know," she said quietly, "once this is over, you're going to have a story that could help a lot of women." I looked at her, confused. "Help them how?" She shrugged. "You escaped. Most don't. You fought. Most can't. And you're not just fighting for yourself anymore, Evelyn. You're shining a light on every ugly corner they expect us to die quietly in." The breeze lifted strands of my hair. I hadn't thought about other women, not really. I'd been too busy surviving. Ruth continued. "You remember how your patients trusted you? The way you always found the right words at the right time? That doesn't disappear just because you retired." I felt something stir inside me. A purpose, a calling, a thread connecting everything. I'd lived through my years as a hospice nurse. My grief, my daughter's betrayal, my escape, my reclaiming. "What would that look like?" I asked. Ruth smiled softly. "You tell your story. You listen to theirs. You create a place for women our age to remember they're still alive. Not visitors in their own lives. Not burdens. Not shadows." I whispered the words back to her. "A place." "Yes," she said. "A place, a circle, a room, a movement, whatever shape it wants to take. But you, Evelyn, you'd lead it." The idea wrapped around me, warm and startling. A place for women like me. A place where we weren't reduced to sweethearts and residents. A place where our stories mattered. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since Michael died, I felt guided. We met with a lawyer the next morning, a woman in her 70s who wore bright scarves and had the sharpest mind I'd seen in years. She scanned the binder. Halfway through, she shut it with a decisive snap. "They overplayed their hand," she said. "Between the falsified assessment, the coercion, the property transfer, and the facility's documented violations. This is not just a civil case." "What do you mean?" I asked. She leaned forward. "This is potential elder abuse. Financial exploitation, possibly fraud." My breath hitched. Fraud, exploitation, abuse. Words no mother ever wants attached to her daughter. "So, what happens now?" I whispered. "We file," she said. "We build, we expose, then you testify." "Testify?" She nodded. "And when you speak, the court will hear what they tried to silence." My heart pounded. Testify. For years, I had spoken for others, patients, families, strangers. Now I'd speak for myself, and for every woman who never made it out. As we walked out of the lawyer's office, Ruth squeezed my hand. "This is it," she said softly. "This is the beginning." I nodded. "This is my comeback," I whispered. "No," she corrected gently. "This is our comeback. Yours, mine, and every woman they ever tried to disappear." And as we stepped into the sunlight, binder in hand, lungs full of the crisp lake air, I felt something powerful fill my chest. A storm gathering, quiet, steady, unstoppable. The courthouse felt colder than the night I escaped the facility. Marble floors, high ceilings, voices echoing like ghosts. People often imagine justice as something loud, gavels slamming, lawyers shouting. But real justice begins in silence. The silence of a mother preparing to face her own child. Ruth stood beside me, Alice on my other side. My lawyer walked ahead, sharp and steady. When they opened the door to the conference room, I saw her. Lena, my daughter. Her hair perfect, her suit immaculate, her expression panicked, but trying to hide it. Joel sat next to her, jaw clenched. He whispered something to her. She didn't hear him. She was too busy staring at me. "Mom?" she breathed. Her voice cracked on the word. "Hello, Lena," I said quietly. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. You're here?" You're out? How did you? She couldn't finish the sentence, because the truth hung between us. She had not expected me to ever sit in front of her again. Not as a person, not as someone with rights, not as someone who could speak for herself. The lawyer cleared her throat. We're here to discuss the allegations of elder exploitation, property coercion, and fraudulent medical documentation. Joel scoffed. This is ridiculous. My lawyer held up a hand. Mr. Harrison, you will not interrupt my client. Lena sank slowly into her chair, eyes never leaving mine. Mom, she whispered again. I was trying to protect you. Protect, the same word used to cloak their betrayal. I felt my breath shake, but I steadied it. For the first time in months, she would hear me. All of me. Protect me from what, Lena? I asked. From my own home? From my independence? From living? Tears welled in her eyes. You fainted, Mom. I got scared. I thought if something happened, something did happen, I said softly. You erased me. She flinched. You made decisions for me. Not with me. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if the impact was physical. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know what else to do, Joel said. I cut her off gently. That's the thing about being an adult, Lena. You don't get to hide behind someone else's voice. And you don't get to decide I'm done living. The room went still. Joel shifted uncomfortably. My lawyer began presenting evidence: the falsified assessment, the coerced signatures, the property transfer. Each document placed on the table felt like another weight lifted from my chest. When she finished, she turned to me. Mrs. Brooks, would you like to make a statement? I stood. My legs were steady, my voice stronger than I expected. Yes, I said. I looked directly at my daughter. When you were born, I began. I promised I would never abandon you, but I didn't promise I would let you abandon me. Lena broke. She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I just thought. You thought I was disposable. No, she cried. I thought you were slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on. I swallowed hard. I wasn't slipping, I whispered. I was lonely. Her tears fell freely now. But loneliness, I said softly, is not a reason to trap someone. Fear is not a reason to erase them, and love, real love, does not hide people away. The judge entered the room then, signaling the meeting was over. But my daughter didn't look away. For the first time in years, she truly saw me. Not the burden, not the obligation, not the extra mouth, but the woman who raised her, the woman she tried to silence, and the woman who had found her voice again. The ruling came in the late afternoon, sunlight spilling across the courtroom floor like a benediction. The judge's voice was steady. The property transfer is hereby voided. The senior facility placement is invalid. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks retains full legal autonomy. Just like that, the paper cage they'd built around me cracked open. Lena buried her face in her hands and cried, not the defensive tears from earlier, but the kind that finally tell the truth. When she lifted her eyes to mine, they were red, trembling. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered. Not for the case, not for the house, but for forgetting you were still living. I touched her cheek gently because forgiveness, like healing, is a long road. We start again, I said softly. From honesty this time. Weeks later, Ruth and I stood in front of the little duplex overlooking Lake Superior, half living space, half something new. Inside, we painted the walls warm gold, placed soft chairs by the windows, filled shelves with journals donated by women who knew too well the quiet ache of being overlooked. And above the doorway, in simple wooden letters, we hung the name, The Ruth Room, a space for women who refuse to disappear. Every week, women came: widows, caretakers, retirees, grandmothers, survivors, each carrying stories heavy enough to bend a spine. We listened, we laughed, we remembered ourselves, and as I watched them, I realized something. My daughter had tried to end my story, but instead, she gave me a new beginning, one that belonged not just to me, but to every woman who walked through that door. Thanks for listening. Which part of the story touched you the deepest? Leave it in the comments and subscribe. We're listening. Your voice truly matters.